felt it in the core of his heart. He's calling himself the most fallen. He's calling himself the most sinful. He's calling himself the most ignorant. He's saying he has no love. But the fact is, he's the most liberated, the most pious, and he has unlimited love. And he really means what he's saying. Because you see, the more we understand Krishna, the more we understand we can't understand Krishna. A person who has a little knowledge thinks, I know Krishna. But the more we actually understand Krishna's unlimited beauty, unlimited everything, the more we understand it's fathomless. The more we love Krishna, the more we feel Krishna's love for us. And Krishna's love is absolutely unlimited. So to the degree we feel Krishna's incomprehensible, inconceivable, ever-increasing love, we naturally think we have no love. Now that's not a depressing thing. That's the most ecstatic thing. It's not that feeling you have no love means you don't have love. It means you have such unbelievable, unlimited, inconceivable love. But when you feel Krishna's love, we understand in comparison, I have nothing. So this is greatness. A true person's greatness is revealed by their humility, because they actually know. Vain knowledge makes us arrogant. Why? Because it's based on something so limited and so superficial. It's like Srila Prabhupada tells a story about the frog in the well. The frog in the well meets somebody who has just come from the Atlantic Ocean. And the person says, "Oh, I have seen the Atlantic Ocean." And the frog says, "Is it as big as my well?" And he says, "I'm sorry, but it's much bigger your well." He says, "How much? Twice as big?" "No, it's much bigger than 3 times as big." He can only calculate in terms of his experience with the well. But the Atlantic Ocean, it's inconceivable to somebody who was born and raised in a well. So he's trying to calculate everything according to the limited boundaries of his own experience's intelligence. But when we break through those boundaries, Krishna's Karuna Sindhu means he's an ocean of compassion. Karuna means kindness, loving compassion. And Sindhu means an ocean. But the scriptures tell the nature of this ocean. The ocean has no shores and has no bottom. Have you ever heard of an ocean like that? You can go down 100 trillion miles and still not reach the bottom of this ocean because it has no bottom. And you can't even say it has 4 sides because it has no shores. It's unlimited. It's everywhere. And even though it has no shores, an ocean of this world, you see, this is where inconceivable concept comes. The oceans in this world, They have their shores. That's a boundary. And when the ocean increases, then it goes over the boundary. Just like we have Mumbai, Chowpatty Beach. Yes? Chowpatty Beach is just 2 blocks from here. So that's the limit on this side. Now, if the ocean were to increase, then Radha Gopinath would be floating in the ocean, our temple, yes. This whole temple would just be part of the ocean. So that's what it would take to expand. Now, how do you expand something that has no boundaries? It's beyond our logical experience. The ocean has no bottom, and at every moment, it's getting infinitely deeper. The ocean has no sides, and at every moment, it's expanding infinitely wider and longer. That is the nature of Krishna's karuna, his kindness, his love. That's the nature of Krishna's beauty, of Krishna's sweetness. That's what Krishna means. If we had a glimpse of understanding what the name Krishna means, we would faint in ecstasy. Krishna means all attractive. That means everything about Krishna, all the beautiful, sweet, loving qualities of Krishna are eternally increasing, infinitely increasing at every moment for the rest of eternity. Now, our little frog in the well intelligence has no experience of anything like that. Therefore, the only way to really understand Krishna is the more we do know, the more we become humble, because we understand how, the more we know, the more we understand how much we'll never know. And to know means, to know in full means, to fully understand, it's inconceivable. Krishna. And yet that one absolute truth who's inconceivably, ever increasingly all-powerful, all-beautiful, all-knowledgeable, all-wealthy, Vedaham samatithani vartamanani charjana babashani chabutani mam tu vedana kashchana. This is just one little quality of Krishna. He says, I know everything that has happened in the past. I know everything that's happening in the present, and I know all things that are yet to come, and in everyone's heart, I know every desire, every thought, every action, every word of every living being in all material and spiritual existence. That's Krishna's knowledge. Yes? And we become proud because we, 26 years, 3 months, 4 days, and 8 hours ago, I remember what I did. Oh, you remember so nicely. What happened 2 minutes before that? I can't remember. Krishna knows everything, and that's just what happened to you. Do you know what happened to Mr. Bhagavan Patel in the village of Lodra in Gujarat 27 years ago? Krishna knows. Krishna. This is knowledge of Krishna. Just one little fraction of his qualities. He knows everything. In the Gita it says, whatever beautiful things are in this whole creation, it's just an insignificant, infinitesimal spark of Krishna's unlimited beauty. What is that beauty? Krishna, he's all attractive. So the more we understand Krishna, we become humble. And that humility facilitates the opportunity for Sharanagati. When we're actually humbled by Krishna's all-merciful, all-compassionate, all-loving nature, all-powerful in that sense, we surrender. And when we surrender, Krishna reveals himself to us. And then we can know Krishna. Otherwise, it's beyond our intellect, it's beyond our mind, it's beyond our senses. But when Krishna reveals himself to us, we can understand him unlimitedly. Not because of our power, because of Krishna's power. That's bhakti. Bhakti is that path whereby, by our sincerity to serve in a spirit of pleasing Krishna, in a mood of surrender, Sharanagati, Krishna reveals himself to us. And then we can understand the unlimited. Srila Prabhupada, he went through many lengths just to give us this insight that we cannot understand the absolute spiritual power of the energy of God or God through material research. It only happens by grace. The power of grace. And you see, grace is not a matter of how much we know or where we're from or what we could do. Grace comes to us simply according to our sincerity, whoever we may be. We read about very simple, uneducated people. Kolavecha Sridhar. He was so poor. He had nothing materially, but he had infinite grace. He had so much grace that he had such pure love for Krishna, for Lord Chaitanya, that Lord Chaitanya was asking, I want to give you something. And Sridhar said, I don't want anything from you. You've already given me your love. I don't want anything else. And Lord Chaitanya was begging him, please ask for something. Sridhar said, I don't want anything. I'm happy. The Lord said, I'll give you, you're so poor, you're emaciated due to hunger, and you're wearing rags, and you're just living in a straw hut that leaks in the rainy season. I'll give you a beautiful palace. I don't want palace. I'll give you the cities of the great yogis. You could perform miracles. By the power of your mind and your intelligence, you can manipulate the astral level of material existence, and you could create things by chanting mantras. You could read people's minds. You could travel in the air anywhere. You could go to other planets by chanting a mantra. He said, I don't want mystic cities. That will just be a disturbance to me, having all these powers. He said, I'll give you liberation, mukti, freedom from suffering forever. You're suffering so much, no more suffering. He said, I don't want mukti. That will just be a distraction. Lord Chaitanya was begging, I want to give you something. He said, but I don't want anything. I only want to please you. He said, well, it'll please me if you ask for something. He said, all right, if it pleases you, then that little boy Nimai that that would come to steal my bananas, in my heart of heart, let me always be meditating on that beautiful form of Nimai coming to steal my bananas. That's all. Lord Chaitanya accepted. The unlimited is defeated by the simple love of a devotee. So yes, Narottam Das Thakur, and he's talking about how he's revealing himself before God and before the whole world with such incredibly deep humility. Because that's the quality of somebody who has so much. And here we find Lord Brahma. He thought he was so much. And then he was exerting some of his power. And when he saw Krishna's unlimited power, he didn't know that all these little calves and these little boys were all him. But all of a sudden, they all turned into Vishnus. They all became the Lord of Vaikuntha. Now, usually you only see one Lord of Vaikuntha. In every Vaikuntha planet, there's only one Vaikuntha-pati. Yes? And here Brahma is saying millions of lords of Vaikuntha standing before him in this little pasture called Vrindavan. And at that point, he became totally blank. And then Krishna, at a certain point, after Brahma became totally blank, that means all of his knowledge, all of his abilities, he realized it was nothing. Then everything disappeared. And all that was left was little Gopal, little boy, just about between 5 and 6 years old at the time. And he's just, little Krishna is just all alone, looking for his cow, looking for his calves, and looking for his friends, and just sincerely just looking like, where are they? Where are they? And he had this little piece of yogurt, dahi, with some rice and fruit in it. 1 year before, that's what he was holding. Brahma saw that little fruit salad, usually, within 2 days it starts decomposing. And it wasn't like, Krishna was refrigerating it. It was just like it was made the same day, a year later. In every detail of this pastime, every minutest detail was Krishna so thoroughly addressed everything possible. Sometimes we see that love is expressed in detail. It's like hospitality. It's the little tiny things that really conquer your heart. Cleanliness. When we're actually look to be, when our temple, every little detail is clean. Every little detail is so nicely arranged. That touches people's hearts. And when we speak people, and we try to offer our respect and our service, when we do it it's the little detailed things that people never forget. Because love is so much in detail. Sometimes mothers, they are very focused on the details. And fathers, we couldn't care less. That's usually what I see. I remember, for my mother, if my father would just say, happy anniversary on their marriage day, that would just thrill her for the rest of the year. He would go out and work so hard to bring back so much money. He didn't make that much, but whatever he could. He was working, he was bringing back stuff. But if he didn't remember their anniversary, then, she was really like, there's something wrong. And the amazing thing, he never remembered their anniversary. And I'm watching, year by year. She's like, the next day, you didn't remember our anniversary. He said, oh, I forgot, I'm sorry. And she was like, sometimes she'd get angry with him too, with a lot of details. You don't care, you don't this, you don't that. He's saying, oh. And I'd call my father. I'd say, Father, he was at work. I'd say, today is Mother's anniversary. It's your anniversary. It's your marriage anniversary. If my father just gave her a flower, if he just took a leaf off one of the bushes from his bedroom window, he just reached out and said, happy anniversary, she would be in ecstasy. That's all it took. I'd call him, I'd say, it's your wedding anniversary. Why don't you at least, tell her something? That's all. And he'd say, oh, yes, I'll buy her something and I'll bring it home. And then he'd come home and he'd forget. Every year, without fail, he would forget. And I'd go and run out into the backyard and steal one of my mother's flowers from her little garland and give it to my father and say, just give it to some mother. He'd say, oh, yes, I will. A couple hours later, it was still sitting on his desk, or it was in his pocket or something. So, little details are very, very powerful ways of expressing our intention. And where does that come from? That comes from Radharani, our love for Krishna. When Radharani makes a garland for Krishna, it's not just like every petal of every flower is folded in a very precise, certain way. And Krishna sees every one of those little curled petals. Yes, that's love. So when Krishna bewildered Brahma, he did it with every possible detail. And Brahma was trying to analyze all these details. The yogurt's still fresh a year later. And every one of these boys, before they became Vishnus, every hair, how many hairs are on a calf? Every hair, and Brahma can observe these things, every hair on every calf was identical to the original calf. And the sound of every calf's moo, and the sound of every cowherd boy's give. Everyone has their own. No two people have the same exact voice. Because everyone has their little fluctuations of voice, their accents, the way their pitch, the way they pronounce words. All these thousands and thousands of gopas, when Krishna became them, he spoke meticulously exactly the way each of them spoke. He dressed the way they spoke. He walked the way they spoke. He moved their eyes. If one little boy would move his eyebrows, he would move just like that. So thoroughly that not a single cow or mother or father recognized that they weren't, that it was not them, it was Krishna. And even when the children played with each other, they were all Krishna. And all the little Krishnas were not even recognizing there was a difference between them. That's how totally absorbed they were in this Leela. And Brahma's seeing it now. When he saw it, what Krishna, and then each one becomes Narayan. The ultimate goal of life is to see Narayan, one Narayan once. Brahma seeing millions of Narayans all at once. In this little pasture ground. And he just blanks out. He realized, I don't know anything. And please understand, it's not that his not knowing anything was that he forgot everything he knew. He still knew everything he knew. And now he even knew more. And he's thinking he doesn't know anything. It's because he's getting a glimpse into Krishna. And when all the Narayans disappear, and there's this little boy, just a little cowherd boy covered with dust from the hooves of the calves, and he's holding his little preparation. He's just, with such innocent, beautiful, childlike eyes, just looking around. Where's my calves? Where's my friends? At that point, Sharanagati. Brahma totally surrendered his body, mind, words, heart, and life to this little cowherd boy. You are so sweet. You are the all-pervading, all-powerful, omnipresent, omniscient Parabrahman. And you're playing just like a little boy, just to reciprocate with our love. It was only at that point when Brahma humbled himself totally and surrendered that he could see Vrindavan. Before he was seeing but not seeing. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena, because we cannot see Krishna or Vrindavan or even the deity in the fullness of what we're seeing, unless our eyes are ornamented with prema, with love. In other words, when there's love, Krishna reveals himself to us. Sri Radha reveals herself to us. And Srila Prabhupada ends this purport with a very intimate paragraph. Because Srila Prabhupada is laying on what we call a deathbed. Of course, there is no death for a liberated soul, but his body was in his last days. And devotees were taking a dictaphone and putting it right up to his mouth, and he was speaking what we're reading today. And he writes, in our Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, there is a tamal tree that covers an entire corner of the courtyard. Before there was a temple, the tree was lying neglected, but now it has developed very luxuriantly, covering the whole corner of the courtyard. This is a sign of Bhuri Punya. You see, when they were given that land, at the time, Raman Reti section of Vrindavan was kind of in the middle of nowhere. It was very far from the town of Vrindavan, relatively. I was living there before that land was given to Srila Prabhupada. And I would regularly go to Raman Reti. And the reason I'd go to Raman Reti is for complete seclusion. Because nobody was there. There were just monkeys and cows and parrots and peacocks all around. It was just beautiful pastures, beautiful forests, beautiful, soft, pleasing sand. And there were a few little ashrams there. I remember there was a Radha Ban Bihari ashram. And in that ashram, little children would put on plays about Krishna. Something like we saw last night at the Kirtan Mumbai, where the little children from Gopal's garden did a play on Damodar Leela. But in Vrindavan, these little Brijavasi children, they put on these plays. They practice for years. They're very elaborate. They're singing, they're dancing, they're speaking, there's dramas, they're dressed with beautiful costumes. And usually there'd be about 40 or 50 Brijavasis and Babajis and sadhus just sitting on the ground watching this drama in the middle of this vast forest and pasture. That was the only thing going on there. When Srila Prabhupada said we should get this land, the devotees were actually very resistant. They said, who's ever going to come here? It's so far from Vrindavan. Prabhupada said, no, we should. And it was just a field. Just a field. That's all. I used to walk through it. Nothing there, nothing around it. And Srila Prabhupada is remembering when he went to that field, there was this tamal tree that was it was totally neglected. I mean, most trees and forests are neglected, but this tamal tree was obviously very kind of old, and it was just hardly, there were hardly any leaves on it. It was kind of dying. And it was right in the middle of where the temple was supposed to be. And Srila Prabhupada gave a specific order. It was coming directly from him. He was very involved. He said, do not cut this tree. It was an old tree with no leaves or flowers or anything. It was just kind of hardly. He said, no. He said, we should build a temple around the tree. We can't take away a tree. So the courtyard, they had to build the courtyard in such a way to honor and respect that tree. And they made a really nice circular boundary to protect the little tree. And over the years, there was such beautiful kirtan and such beautiful devotion and such lovely worship of Krishna Balaram, Radha Shyam Sundar, Gaurnitai, Tulsi Devi, that in that atmosphere of devotion, that Tamal tree was growing and growing and growing to such an extent when they first had the temple built, there was just like a little branch with a few leaves, just, coming out of this little boundary that they built around the tree in the courtyard. And when Prabhupada's writing this purport, about a third of the whole courtyard was covered with this tree. Millions of leaves, or thousands and thousands of leaves and flowers. And Srila Prabhupada he's seeing this is so significant. He's putting this in his book for all time to come. See? Because where there's devotion, there's growth. Because there was no one singing and chanting and performing devotional service, the tree was just a regular old tree kind of dying. But in that atmosphere, the tree flourished. And in the same way, that Bhakti Lata Bija, that creeper of devotion that's within our heart, if we're in an atmosphere where there's genuine devotion, where there's sincere chanting of Krishna's names, sincere Hari Katha speaking about Krishna, sincere loving offerings made to Radharani and Krishna. In that environment, that kind of withered old Tamal tree within our heart will become healthy and fresh and flourish. Thank you very much.